Anyway, it's a pleasure to be here, and I'd like to talk about one of our newest and exciting programs that I'm, very proud to be associated with, and that's called the Brighter Futures Mentorship Program. Now, I'm just going to start out. What's mentoring? Well, it's pretty simple. You're advising or training somebody, often somebody with less experience. So, for example, mentoring would be just what I'm doing now. Hopefully you'll learn something from this. So I'm actually doing some mentoring right now. Usually think of mentoring as an older person with a younger person, and look at the audience. Yeah, I'm older, you're younger, so we fit that category as well. So, but I'll ask you the question, and when we were talking about this program to start with, some of the people I was working with, said, well, I've mentored, I'm a good mentor. And I said, okay, what's a good mentor? So I'll ask you that question. What's a good mentor?
Listening,
Listening,
teaching,
teaching, communicating, non-judgmental. Okay, great. Communication. So we could go on and on and on. There's a lot of good things. Makes you a good mentor, but I think has training experience as a good mentor, okay? And he's always striving to learn more. I think that makes a good mentor. In the old days, we used books, to indicate knowledge, where you can go for information. Now we put Google up there, where most of us go. And also experience. You can't replace experience, okay? It's just, and no matter how often you do it, next time you do it, you're going to learn something more. At least that's been my experience, okay? And it also depends on who you're mentoring and what you're mentoring about. Most of these I've mentored in the past, except for the prison. But I would say, if you're mentoring prisoners, adult prisoners, you're probably not going to be maybe the best Sunday school teacher, for example. Or if you've done sports, it might be that you don't do the Boy Scouts. So it all depends on what you're trying to mentor and who you're trying to mentor. So what we're doing in our program, we're mentoring youth at risk, and there's some trends that I see going on. Makes you ask the question: how bright is their future for a lot of these youth at risk? Behavioral problems are on the rise. For example, many students are not career ready, not ready to get out there in the real world. Rise in violent behavior in schools and the communities. Not only violence towards others, but violence towards themselves, like suicide, for example. COVID, kids are alone. Many kids are alone at their houses. And to me, that just promoted misbehavior, unsupervised youth. More time for students on social media and playing video games. A lot of screen time. Kids are on the screens all day at school. What do? They go home, look at their phones, and look at their computers and so forth. So they're not out there doing things physically like they used to be. Decline in respect for authority. Turn on the news. We see that. Okay, that's nothing new there. Violence, I think, is becoming more tolerated. I don't know if it's increasing, but it's becoming more tolerated. Excuses coming out. So you put all these things together, to me, you got a perfect storm brewing out there. What the solution is, I'm not sure. One thing I do see is people out in the community are wanting the schools to raise their kids. Now, if you go back and look at the history of schools, you'll see that schools were actually created in South Carolina because kids were out there on the farm working on the fields and stuff, and they weren't learning their ABCs. So they created schools so the kids would be educated as far as, English and so forth. So that's one reason. I think we're back at that way for a different reason, though. So, the solution to the problem, I think it's going to be a kind of more of a holistic community approach. But the question is, how can community members make a difference? And that's where I think our Brighter Futures mentorship can be at least a partial solution to the problems I just talked about. So, when you start in a mentorship program, there's a lot of considerations you got to think about. It's like, great, yeah, I'm doing this, but how am I going to do it? That's the question, okay? So you got to think about the logistics. What schools? What grades? We're doing middle school in our program because that's the grades. The kids are starting to develop attitudes, decide what they should be doing in the future. The type of students, youth at risk, or you got college-bound students. We're going with the youth at risk. In versus after school, we selected in school at least to start with. There's a lot less liability involved when you do in-school programs versus after school. Time you have available. We have like an hour and a half for our program, so you have to fit everything in there nicely. And then the resources you have to work with, money and people. You heard this over and over, I think, today. It takes a village to raise students and so forth, youth. And if you look at any federal grant, and I've done a lot of these, the partners, they say you need to have schools, government agencies, community organizations, private industry, community leaders, and lawmakers. You got to put all these people together. Now, these people are usually used to working in silos, And getting them to work together, that's sometimes a little tough. Everybody wants to take claim for the program, but the program's a partnership. It's not any individual organization or agency. It's a partnership. You need volunteer mentors, finding them, getting them involved. That's always tough. Formalized curriculum. They always say evidence-based practices and so forth. So we try to put up something new to work on. Has to have accountability, transparency, most and foremost, safety for the students. And we want to expand our success. We just don't want to do it one or two schools. Myself working for Clemson, I want to see it will go across the whole state eventually, okay? And the starting date, well, in our case, we started this spring. The check came in, we had to roll real fast. So what are our goals? Well, we want to complement an existing program. A lot of people like to start their own program, their own little silo, but we wanted a program that's going to complement something that's already ongoing. We wanted to highlight life skills, of course. We wanted to give the students an avenue to discuss what's on their mind. You'll find a lot of times, and we did too, that these kids have no one to talk to. And the ones they are talked to often shouldn't be people they should be talking to. You know what I mean? So anyway, getting local communities members involved in the mentoring program. And we want to also, include adult education too. It just doesn't, can't be at the youth. It also has to have, the parents, school employees, community members. And we're very proud that we're partnering with the Jonathan Foundation, and part of what we're doing today is part of this program. So we've got two great schools working with us. One's Darlington Middle School, and we're working with their I Will program. I Will is like an intervention program to prevent kids going into the alternative school for further misbehavior. So I think it's a fantastic program. Get these kids stopped before they go off the deep end, okay? And then we're working with the Rush Academy over in Florence District 1. That is the alternative school. And we're very fortunate to become a part of their program over there. I got 10 to 15 students in the program. Those students rotate in and out of those programs. They don't stay in there the whole year. So kind of a little bit of a limitation. We know the kids aren't going to get the full complement of our program, but it's actually worked out quite well. They're in there for, like I said, 25 days, good behavior. They're out sooner. Bad behavior, they could be in there the whole year, right? So anyway, that's kind of one of the limitations we're looking at. It is life skill oriented. We meet, each session is 60 to 90 minutes. We meet with them weekly at both schools. And we try to develop a type of program where we talk about life skill each week, but we try to inspire discussion between the mentors and the students. It's not just there me to lecture as the leader, but how we do it real quick. And I'll start out talking about decision making, snap decision, complex decision, what it is. Then the mentors will sit there for about 10 minutes and talk about the kids, what it is. Have you ever done a snap decision, wished you did a complex decision, and back and forth. Get that conversation rolling. Find out what's on their mind. How could a complex decision help you with a problem that you're working on right now? So I tell my mentors, get that conversation. That's what the idea behind the question is. Not to get an answer, but to get the conversation going. So we have, I think, 15 different areas we're working on. One of the things we want to look at is, what's the knowledge gained by the students? Did they learn anything about it? So we do pre and post tests. And also our second objective is to get that conversation going between the mentors and kids, so the kids can open up and tell, the mentors what's going on. And then the third overall goal is, are we of use to the school or the program that we're working with? So the first thing we looked at is before and after quizzes. We did that twice in both schools and averaged over the schools and both times and so forth. The pre-quiz showed that, the kids answered the answers 42% of the time, right? And after we had the program, it was 70%. So knowledge gain, we're making progress there, pretty good progress. And then at the end of the year, this year, I surveyed the teachers for different aspects of how this program fit into their program, were the students engaged, were the mentors engaged, were we well prepared, and we got a very good report card from the teachers, 94% grade for the teachers at the Rush Academy, and I got the numbers back from Darlington Middle School, and that was 99%. So we can make a little bit of improvement, but we did pretty good for the first year, okay? I'm done bragging, okay? But and next year we'll use a modified ACEs exam to kind of figure out how much time we need to devote to each of the topics. If the kids don't have a major problem with that at home, the kids that we're working with, then we won't spend that much time on it. We'll still touch on it, but we're not going to spend a lot of time on it. Where there's major problems, then we'll spend more time on it. So that's how we'll use the ACEs. And I said modified in that if you look at the ACEs test, it's like at your home, is this a problem? I want to make it after school or outside the school, is this a problem? So the parents don't feel we're picking on them or trying to get into their business. So it'll be a modified ACEs. Okay, like I said, we're going to put like a 15-week program together, a very formal program. We'll repeat that program in the fall and the spring. And I'd like to say thank you to our mentors. Now, where's our mentors out there? I noticed some of them in here. And our teachers, the teachers involved. Hey, without them, we wouldn't have had this program. They're volunteering their time and their efforts and so forth, and we do appreciate that very much. We also have what's called an outdoor engagement center over at the Darlington Middle School, and we're been using that quite a bit. If you look at the literature, green space is very important to mental and physical health. I think that's been a big benefit to taking the students out there on the days that the weather's good. Days it's real hot now, but days the weather's good. It's been actually just bringing different angles into the program to make it a success. Examples of things we did, the bottom left up there, we did a trivia scavenger hunt where the kids paired up with their mentors, went around the center out there and found answers to trivia questions. David, I don't think he's here, but he did a tennis program, one of the sessions, just to show them the benefits of mental health by physical exercise. And then we did a smell the roses. That's where I told the kids and the mentors to go out and find something that catches your interest and then come back and tell us why. And it was amazing how, I remember this flower at my grandma's house, or I remember doing this with my brothers and sisters. One sad thing was, one of the kids told me my mom used to have that, that bush out there in the yard before she passed away. And so anyway, it does get them to go back. It does put them in kind of a positive mode. And like I said, we're just not the youth too. We also have an adult program. The Brighter Days Conference is a part of that. We want to work with the parents and community members, anybody that's interested or feels they need help. We like to get into there and do some education too, like we're doing here today. And I can't go, I started out by saying resources, and of course, money is important. Having some resources starting to do that, and we were very fortunate to be able to do that. We have some great mentors, and we got a grant from the state. Thank you to House Representative Robert Williams, who pushed that through for us. So we have funding for a 3 years program to do that, to get this up and going. Also like to thank some of our corporate sponsors, like Nucor. They've been sending their employees over for the community service, just about every week at both schools. So couldn't ask for any more. We have some other industries. I won't say for sure yet who they are because we haven't got them going yet, but we do have other industries who want to do the same thing, that their employees have to do community service. They require that of their employees, not because their employees did anything bad, but they just require that as a part of their company. So like I said, we're looking to expand it. We did get some names today, and somewhere we have a sign-up sheet. Yes, Miss Elizabeth there. So if anybody's interested in becoming a mentor next year, please sign up the list. We'll get back to you. Like I said, it's about an hour and a half at each of the schools. Some mentors do both schools, some do just one of the schools. So it's up to you. But we do appreciate your time and effort.